Men who suddenly lost your interest in someone but for a weird reason. What was it? Story 1. She accused me of cheating on her in a past life. Story 2. A elderly gentleman fell in front of us. He took a nasty fall. She found it hilarious. Instead of helping, she just stood there laughing. I helped that person out and I felt so embarrassed for her behavior. Also, that was the last time I saw her. It was a major turnoff for me. Story 3. Every time I would stand close to her, I could smell piss. I thought maybe she was going through her periods or some UTI, but the smell was consistent for days and very strong. I just couldn't associate such a pretty face with such smell, so I backed out. Also, some people say I have a strong sense of smell, so that could be it as well. Story 4. I invited the girl from my psych course I'd been vibing with to a party. Her car rolled up and I came out to greet her, but it was a dude's car, and she was drunkenly making out with him as I walked up. I didn't flip out or anything, but she slurred her way through some weird attempt at reassuring me that I shouldn't worry, because she was only sleeping with him to punish him because he was a bad guy. Apparently that's a thing she does, and that I was a good guy. I didn't ask what happened to good guys. I felt bad for her date, whom she completely ignored the rest of the night. As for the girl, she ended up totally engrossed with the party host's gerbil, tapping on the glass of its cage, whispering how she wanted to kill it. I found somewhere new to sit in psych class for the rest of the semester. Story 5. The way she treated her children, her boy was permitted everything, and her daughter had to follow very strict rules. Story 6. She kept buying me stuff. It was nice at first, but she kept doing it weekly and demanded I give gifts in return. I asked her to stop and she said, "Nope, this is what I do." Felt like she didn't even care about what I wanted. Story 7. I started dating this girl and realized she took 2-minute showers and didn't really clean herself. She would stand under the water and effortlessly rub soap on herself like a child. It's almost as if she hated showers. Never once saw her scrub her feet or anything. Nonetheless, she didn't wipe the best either after taking a dump, and I'd be lying if I said there wasn't lingering poop smells during sex. Hygiene is important, my friends. Nothing better than someone who loves to take care of themselves. Story 8. I'd been talking to this girl in class I thought was really cool. We ended up going for a bite after class one day, and she suggested we go hang out in my dorm room. Hell yeah. Then she took off her glasses and she looked exactly like my mom. It was so jarring I excused myself to the bathroom to regroup, but when I came back, I couldn't unsee my mom's face on her. I made some lame excuse and went back alone. I felt bad about bailing on her, but I also, how the hell would I tell her the real reason? Either she thinks I'm a weirdo or thinks I'm saying she looks like she's in her 50s. Story 9. My mate ghosted a girl simply because he didn't like her cadence when she spoke. Story 10. He spat in her hands and rubbed them together because she needed to wash them. I cannot describe the colossal speed at which that switch turned off. Story 11. This was me, but heard from a family member about their coworker. Apparently, this guy was happily married with kids for years, then had a stroke. Sadly, he instantly hated his wife and his kids and got a divorce. Complete personality change at work, too. That, as a husband and father, scares me if it happens to us. Story 12. It was a really horrible relationship, even this aside. But my wow, I think I actually hate this person moment was when we were at Badlands National Park. We were just walking out of the gift shop with some other woman when she just let go of the door, and it like slammed into that woman's face. I said to her, "OMG, I'm so sorry." Then when we got to the car, I said to my GF in like a joking tone, "I can't believe you didn't hold the door for her. Haha." And because she was a very, very miserable person all the time, this makes her mad, and she goes, "Well, you're the man, you're supposed to hold the door. I don't need to hold the door for anybody." And yeah, that one statement alone was very eye-opening for me. Seriously, the easiest, least heartbreaking breakup I've ever gone through. Story 13. Her ditzy and naive behavior was really cute at first, but eventually I found out she really was that dumb and dating her would be exhausting. Story 14. She told me she was pregnant and it was mine, 2 days after sleeping with me for the first and only time. Then proceeded to tell me she had a boyfriend. I should have twigged earlier, really. She flew from Norway to sleep with me and flew back the next day. Story 15. She didn't hold the door open to people just meeting her at the door, would let it slam on people behind her, didn't do the little thank you wave to other cars that let her out, didn't say please and thank you to serving staff. She wasn't overtly rude, she just had a bit of a me vibe. Story 16. After 3 dates, she sat in front of my house on a Sunday morning at 8, texting me. She did not live in the same city as me. Story 17. Moving way too fast. 1, maybe third date. "Hey, I'm moving to LA and you should come with me." Another, maybe second or third date. "I'm not on birth control and have the mindset of if it happens, it happens." Another 3, 4th, date. "We should get a dog together," I told each of them. "I think we want different things." Story 18. She had a set of golf clubs in a golf bag standing in the middle of her bedroom, right in the way of everything. After a few weeks of visits, I finally suggested that maybe she should put the clubs in her garage. Well, she didn't like my suggestion and basically came unglued at the idea that I would tell her how to live her life. So I agreed. No one should tell you how to live your life. Bye. That was the end. Story 19. My cat didn't like her. Brought her home to introduce her to my parents. She meets my childhood cat and it goes psychotic. Just for her reaching down to pat him, he panicked, attached himself to her arm and wouldn't let go, just clawing at her like he found a demon to fight or something. When he eventually detached himself, they were both running around the room screaming as she tried to wave him off her arm. I checked her over and he did some damage. He's never reacted like that to anyone before or since. We broke it off shortly later. I found out a few years ago she was in the court system. Why? She tried to kill her own kid. I didn't dodge a bullet because of my cat. I dodged an artillery shell. Story 20. Way back in college, I was doing some training for a call center job, and there was a super beautiful girl in my class. We got divided up into groups for something and got grouped together. Pretty much the first thing she did was start making fun of our disabled coworkers in another group, and on top of that, she was dumb as a bag of rocks. Seriously, one of the most dumpster fire personalities I've ever encountered. Story 21. She asked really precise things about our future. Worst part was, she would talk me through building our future house, which color it should be, how she wants the kitchen to look like. No ma'am. This is our second date. Relax. Story 22. Went on a few dates with a girl who by all means was a perfect match for me. Kind-hearted, funny, hot, and super into gaming and anime. On our third date, we did a double date with her ex-boyfriend, who I was friends with, and his new girlfriend. He brought up a story about a time she shit her pants, and she chimed in and told the whole story. Immature me was super grossed out and lost all attraction. That's probably exactly what the dude wanted to happen. Looking back, I cringe at the fact I dumped her. Her biggest flaw was that she was willing to tell a very embarrassing story in front of me. Lol, what an idiot I was. Story 23. There is a couple, one person we went on a hike and they threw their energy drink can into a bush. I obviously made them pick it up and put it in the trash, but seeing that hella turned me off. Another one, they never cleaned their stretched ears so it would smell like rotting carcass. Story 24. She would have a strong strawberry air freshener in her small flat with no windows open and served me hot sausage casserole. Story 25. I went to the grocery store with her and it turns out she was one of those people with no awareness that is in everyone's way. Story 26. I saw her kick her dog. Really hard. The dog didn't want to come back to her after. I didn't have to. Story 27. She rummaged through my stuff acting like she had the right. Story 28. In biology class, she kept laughing while stabbing a dead frog that we were supposed to dissect. Story 29. They needed attention more than they wanted me. I am not an emotional battery. Story 30. I'm not sure if it was a weird reason since I can't imagine anyone enjoying this, but her place reeked of old stale animal piss. I had taken her home after a date, but I realized I really needed to hit the restroom. But she lived a solid 10-15 minute drive from civilization, so she agreed for me to use her toilet real quick. The moment I stepped through the front door, it was like a solid wall of stale animal piss punching me in the face. Did my best to not gag crossing through the whole house being yipped at by two different rat dogs, don't know how to spell it, tiny, annoying, trembling, fearful bravery, and spotted at least two cats, I think, peering at me from behind furniture. Even had to hold my shirt over my nose while I was using the toilet. It was awful. Seriously, clean up after your pets. It's one thing if the accident happened while we were gone, but I've had animals before. Fresh, semi-fresh smells different than stale and old. Story 31. She went to ride a train and after a homeless guy walked past, she screamed, "You fucking stink!" Felt bad for the homeless dude. Story 32. She smelled like soup. Story 33. We were sexting back and forth, then one morning, she just sends me a photo of her tits covered in some other guy's load. We weren't exclusive, but nothing I'd said implied I'd be into that. And it 100% killed any interest I had in her. Gave me a good point to empathize with women not wanting surprise dick pics, even from guys they're seeing though. Story 34. Went on a date with a Polish girl. Was going quite well. She seemed really nice. Then she suddenly started asking me what my opinion of Polish people was. I would have thought me being on a date with her would kind of answer that, but alas, I assured her I had no issue with them. They're good people from what I've experienced. All good. And then she wouldn't let it go. She asked me again like 3 or 4 times. We got stuck on this for like a solid 30 minutes of me telling her the same thing. I honestly don't know what else I could have said to reassure her, but she seemingly wasn't getting the answer that she wanted. I guess she had some insecurity about it, but the way she wouldn't drop it despite me asking her to move the conversation on made me think this is something that would be hanging over any potential relationship and wouldn't go away, so made me lose interest pretty quick. Story 35. Was dating a girl for a few months, and one night we went out to a bar, and we happened to run into one of her old guy friends. The night wraps up, and he asks for a ride, so she said she'd drive him home. We get to the car, and I start to get in the front seat, and she tells me to get in the back seat, and her friend just gave me a look like I was a chump and says, "Yeah, get in the back seat." I just closed the door and walked away. Never called her again. Story 36. Went on a date, and somehow the topic of the Alamo came up. For some reason, she mentioned how crazy it was that the Texans won. I was like, I'm pretty sure they all famously died after putting up a very brave fight. She immediately argued that I was wrong. I thought about backing down, but I just knew I was right, so I stuck to my guns. Eventually, we looked it up, and lo and behold, she was wrong. She was clearly upset for the rest of the date. Surprisingly, she wanted to see me afterward for some follow-up dates, but I just couldn't get past her inability to be wrong, so I made up some excuses and bailed. Story 37. Very cute girl, very sweet, really liked me. But she looked way younger than she was, and I worked for middle school. Her features were too close to the students, and it made me feel weird. Story 38. She told me she doesn't buy electronics in certain months because of the zodiac signs. Story 39. Hygiene. She was like my twin personality-wise. We got along great, but she would use heavy perfume to cover up her BO. Her hair would look a bit greasy at times, and I could tell some days that she hadn't showered in a while. She also partied a lot and was into party drugs. Wasn't really my cup of tea. I was very infatuated by her when our friendship started. Her looks and personality were very attractive to me. Over time, though, I just found that my attraction fizzled out, and I just loved her as a friend. I could not get over her hygiene. She eventually asked me out, but I was not interested in that kind of relationship with her. Unknowingly at the time, that ended our friendship. She stopped talking to me after that. Still a bit saddened by it. It was quite a few years ago now, though. Story 40, she kept insisting that I was lying and then said she'd have to train me to be honest like one of her dogs. Story 41. Her dogs were horrible, loud, out of control, no sense of personal space, wouldn't listen. She'd just laugh it off and call them her sweet little boys. Nope, deleted as soon as I left her place. Story 42. So I'm telling a girl I've been seeing for a few months now that I can't go to the gym because I'm sore from skateboarding. I've been skating my whole life. She says I shouldn't be sore because you just stand on it. When I attempt to tell her skating is rather physical, she cuts me off and reiterates, "No, you just stand on it." Never saw her again. Story 43. She worked at the bank down the street from my house. Super cute, very friendly, and I had a chance. Then I got a note from her, and her spelling and grammar were atrocious. Story 44. Watched my 25-year-old girlfriend of 2 months play wrestle with her half-brother. Was weirdly sexual, biting, deep eye contact, and flirtatious giggling. Noped out of there, broke it off. Took her friend home for the night. Story 45. When I was about 9 years old, this new girl joined the class and took a strong liking to me immediately. I'm talking forcibly kissing me in the playground. I didn't mind. Telling everyone she's going to marry me. One time actually straddled me on the playing field and knew what it meant, which in hindsight is a bit worrying. Anyway, she was super into horses. My name is Paul, and she wrote me a note spelling my name Pole, like foal. I ripped up the note and never spoke to her again. Story 46. She had a really bad laugh, and her eyes would get huge when she laughed. It was genuinely unnerving, and I once found myself over-caffeinated and nearly pushed toward an anxiety attack. It was in college. I texted a friend and asked them to call me with a fake emergency so I could leave the conversation with her and calm down, give it a bit to get my caffeine levels down. But later on, in a healthier mental state, all I could think of was the time I had been legitimately frightened by her expression while laughing. Story 47. She told me it was okay for mankind to walk on the surface of the sun at night since it was cooler. Story 48. Broke up with her after landing in Germany. She knew months and months prior. I land, and she responded to my letting her know I landed in Germany. Germany? I thought you were going to Europe. Broke up with her then and there. Story 49. She told me this other mutual guy friend of ours, who was a well-known complete idiot, was a genius. Totally woke me up and snapped me out of any interest in her. Story 50. Not weird, but just got fed up. She didn't know how to cook. She had this thing with brown rice. She called it crunchy rice, but it was just undercooked. She was really picky with food. We couldn't try a new restaurant because she was afraid she wouldn't like the food. We didn't have money to pay bills, but she had money for a LV bag. These things just got old. Story 51. She started wearing those weird shoes that have individual toe slots. Was never the same again. Story 52. We worked together. One day, we had our lunches together in the break room. She was dipping cherry tomatoes into hummus and was sticking her fingers into her mouth up to the second knuckle to eat them. Horrific. My little brother used to eat potato chips the same way. Story 53. High maintenance W0 skills. Survived by having simps around her doing shit for her. Constant drama. My interest in her lasted 2 full days due to how crazy attractive she was physically, but them red flags blocked out the sun on a hot summer day edit. I guess not simps per se, just lustful dudes who would give an arm and a leg to keep a hot girl around. Story 54. Between breaking up with my ex and meeting my current partner, I briefly dated this bipolar chick. She was funny and DTF 24/7s, but incredibly hot and cold most of the time. I remember going over to her place for the last time and seeing how disgustingly gross her kitchen was. Mold on every plate, sticky floors, you get the idea. So I cleaned her whole kitchen for her and it looked awesome. But instead of even a quick thanks, she unloaded on me about how I clearly didn't love her because I thought she was gross. I calmed her down, left once she was asleep and didn't talk to her for a few days because she was still raging according to her friends. So I jumped ship. I don't expect praise for doing a job, especially when I decided to do said job unprompted. But I do expect to not have someone rage for multiple days at a time over my decision to clean their stank-ass kitchen. Story 55 is being told she can't help with bills, but then buys $200 worth of Christmas decorations for a possible $100 off rent. Story 56. Really liked this girl in high school I was dating. Suddenly, she is telling me she doesn't think kids should be vaccinated and that it causes autism. Story 57. Dated a girl with a mole on her face and she dumped me. A few months later, I was really into a girl in one of my classes. We hit it off great too. But when I was able to get closer to her, I saw she had a small mole on her neck. Stopped talking to her because I was afraid people me would think I had a thing for mole girls. Story 58. She truly believed gaming is something everyone should stop after growing up and was visibly surprised that adults can enjoy a casual couple of hours to the point that she made condescending remarks and jokes about it. Then, when I simply said it was off-putting and I don't appreciate what she said, she refused to admit she meant it. Immediately went from, okay, maybe something can happen between us, to not a chance. No, no, no. Story 59. On a first date, I once had a girl spill water on herself and get really upset. She said she was going to the bathroom to dry off, but instead discreetly paid for both our meals and left. Took me over 5 minutes to realize she was gone, and another 5 to find out she paid. Never heard from her again. It's possible I did something to annoy or offend her, but I genuinely think she was just embarrassed about the spill. Story 60. Getting zero reciprocated affection. It's happening right now, actually. It's not like it's our first date. It's like our 10th. It's been a few months. We have gone all the way. I don't think I can handle falling in love with girl and getting no affection. All the affection comes from me. She has literally never hugged, kissed me on her own, so I think I'm done. Story 61. IDK if it's weird or valid, but I've turned down girls, called off flings in the past because their friends were annoying. Back in those days, I only seemed to gel with shy girls who happened to have relentless friends that would get super overexcited and patronizing about them dating. Story 62. We had sex for the first time and a few minutes later she said, Asian people creep me out. It's burned into my memory unlike anything else. I don't even remember what led up to that comment, but I dumped her pretty much immediately. She then accused me of fuck and dump, at which point I told her she's a racist cunt. Story 63. Kept scattering their things all over my place whenever they came over. It just made me imagine the sheer amount of cleaning and putting things back I would have to do if we ever lived together. I think the fact they would do that in a place that doesn't belong to them made it worse. I don't care that your desk is a mess. I'm bothered by the fact you don't mind messing mine. Story 64. I guess she had guys trying to coerce her with this, but once a girl rejected me and said, please don't hurt yourself over me, it probably wasn't meant in an arrogant way, but immediately all I felt was, wow, you're not that great. Story 65. Once went on a great date, but she told me she didn't like dogs. It was like a switch flipped. Couldn't imagine a life without my furry companion. Sorry, but my pup's my ride or die. Story 66. Spend the whole day out on a hot summer day. Made a joke about how I can't wait to shower. With a serious face, she told me she hates showering. She was super hot, but I lost interest real quick. Story 67. She used to bitch about anyone, was always bragging about how all men were after her, and would never listen to me, control me, so I broke off our friendship. Story 68. I met a girl who was really fun at first. We could talk about anything for a long time. But later, she started talking way too much about random bullshit stuff. She became extremely boring. One time she was counting her shoes while we talked on the phone, and she was describing each pair, how they looked like, where she bought them, and it was like, I bought these shoes here. No, actually, I bought them there. No, sorry, actually. I forgot I bought these in another place. Or maybe not there. I don't remember where I bought them. Maybe at that other place? And it was going on and on forever. Her shoe monologue probably lasted around 30 minutes, and I just couldn't take it anymore. Every conversation became like this. I would just listen to her blabbering while I was boiling inside from boredom. And every time before finishing our phone call, she would say my name and I would ask, yes? Then she waited 10 seconds and then said, I love you. Ah, the cringe. And on top of that, she was always speaking in a monotone voice like a robot. Story 69. Went out a few times with this girl. She seemed nice. She bought me a present for our third date. It was something pretty thoughtful that I actually used a lot, but it did seem strange. We were getting along well enough, and the next date we agreed to just hang out and watch a movie. I was house sitting for a relative and invited her over there. She said she couldn't. So I went to her place and we watched a movie on my laptop. I asked why she couldn't come over to my relative's place, and she said she didn't want to get raped. She was dead serious about this. Her roommates were home, so she felt safe at home, I guess. But it seemed like a strange attitude for a fourth date, and from someone who had bought me a thoughtful gift. So I asked her if she really thought I would do something like that, and she said, of course you would. You're a guy. It's not your fault. It's not like you can help it. She was under the impression that if she went over there, she would get raped because that's what men do when there's no one else around. She wanted to keep dating, but literally thought that I was a danger to her just but my nature. To be clear, I hadn't done or said anything untoward to her. She said early on that she liked to move slow, and it didn't bother me at all. I hadn't even kissed her yet. I also get that things are different for single women, and I'd never begrudge someone for looking out for their own safety, but this was a deep-rooted belief that all men were dangerous given the opportunity. Never talk to her again. Still have the gift, though. Edit. The gift was a small, loose-leaf tea infuser. It was thoughtful because we talked about me being more of a tea drinker than a coffee drinker. Story 70. She kept complimenting herself and putting me on the spot to agree with her. Gee, everyone tells me my eyes are beautiful. Men can't resist my eyes. My eyes look good, right? Right? Story 71. Went to her apartment and watched her dog pee on the floor, and she didn't try to clean it even after an hour passed. Story 72. I was dating this girl once, and after a particularly good kiss, she leaned back and smiled and looked exactly like Keira Knightley. At the time, I really disliked her, and it just killed it on the spot. Yes, I've since moved beyond that, and recognized that it was weird. Keira Knightley is no longer problematic for me. Sorry, Paige, you did nothing wrong. Story 73. She didn't like the movie Repo Man. Story 74. First date. All she talked about was her dislikes and what she strongly dislikes. Sharing mutual icks can be fun to laugh about for sure, but at a certain point it just gives a chronic hater vibe. Even when I asked about her interests, things she could potentially be passionate about, she'd circle back to negative. Story 75. Didn't happen to me, but a crush I used to have spoke down to a guy I know. He gave her a gift for her graduation party. Was perfume. She immediately doused herself in it, and he jokingly said not to use it all at once. Then she goes ahead and tells him that she can do whatever she wants, the perfume, and that she wasn't doing it for him because he is everything she's not looking for in a guy and stuff like that in front of everybody. Went overboard, she did. Story 76. She said she was gonna fuck my brains out and then put a finger unannounced in my ass during a blowjob. Story 77. I took her to the zoo for a date. They had an animatronic dinosaur exhibit. When I saw the sign, I said I definitely want to go see it. Her reply was, I thought they were extinct. I then explained that they were robots, not real dinosaurs. She then told me, no, the sign says that they are real. I explained again that they are robots and that it says that for kids. She argued with me for 5 minutes that the zoo had real dinosaurs. Then we passed the bear exhibit, and she also thought that they were extinct and used this to prove her point about the dino exhibit. Story 78. She told me no one had ever broken up with her. It was like a switch flipped. I broke up with her before the end of that week. Story 79. They could not control their mouth whenever a baby was crying in public. Like, I get it, .ts annoying, it's loud, it's grating, but it's a baby. It doesn't even have proper consciousness yet. This person would loudly go, ugh, someone kill it. It was so cringe. Story 80. On our first, only date, she was continually down on herself. She was slender and shapely, but called herself fat and dumpy. Smart, but called herself useless. I tried to counter her statements, but she wasn't having it. By the end of dinner, she won, and I wanted out. Story 81. Drinking habit. would call me slurring, uninterruptible words at 1 a.m. on a Tuesday. Grown-ass woman in her 30s. She meant well, but I decided I couldn't spend my time or energy on someone who made those types of choices. In my area, drinking is mislabeled as culture, when it's really just a poor excuse for being a loser. Story 82. Hated her smile. Thought to myself, do I really want to date a girl where I am disincentivized to make her happy? That was mainly it. Story 83. There was a girl I dated for a short time. She was beautiful, kind, and liked my kids. She had this habit of periodically rolling her eyes back and blinking, almost alien-like. I freaked out and stopped calling her. Story 84. She told me, no offense, but I'm not going anywhere with you if you pick me up in that car. The car was a 1995 Miata. I told her no worries, just meet me there. I proceeded to not meet her there and then never spoke to her again. Don't ever disrespect the Miata. Story 85. I googled her name and the first thing that showed up was an essay she did back in college about the death penalty, and it wasn't very good. Story 86. Her tits smelled like onions. I later found out this happens when under the boob sweats a lot into the bra and both the area and bra doesn't get washed. Story 87. She had tomato ketchup with everything. She had to go. Story 88. I don't think this is a weird one, but the cleanliness of her car. I drove us for the first few dates, but one day she offered to pick me up at work and we could hang out, so I said hell yeah. When I got in, there were fast food bags and trash surrounding my feet. I looked to the back seat, and it was covered in trash. That little leg space between the bench and driver passenger seats was filled to the top with empty bottles and loose food wrappers. She didn't even comment on it like, oh, I tried to get this clean today, but insert any excuse here as a Hail Mary. So yeah, easy reason to stop seeing someone. But I thought it was weird how anyone could keep their car in that condition. Story 89. Super fit girl, very pretty, great boobs, but cankles, calves, straight to ankles, cankles. Story 90 would sometimes get really serious in a convo, and it would always start with, how are we doing? She was basically giving me quarterly evaluations. Story 91. She has a nicely designed set of books on her night table, but they were only there for decoration. She didn't even have any intention of reading them. Story 92. People who send texts like, are you RD to go? Since it's apparently impossibly hard to just type out the other 8 letters in, are you ready to go? It's like nails on a chalkboard reading shorthand like this. Story 93. While watching her work a party, I realized everyone likes her because she agrees with and encourages whatever the person she's talking to says. Literally, everything. No matter how vile or diametrically opposed they are to the last person she talked to. She's intelligent, but doesn't stand for anything except whatever makes her likable in the moment. Story 94. One night she told me she loves me. Next morning she said she wasn't sure. Next night she said, I love you again. Next morning? You get the picture? Not sure if that's weird enough for this thread. Story 95. The way she came. It was like a snuffling pig. Worse was that once she came, it was all over. I was left hanging. No follow-up. Shop closed. Come back tomorrow. Story 96. She left her hairdryer in my spare room, then some clothes, stealth moving in. Really wasn't into that idea at the time. Story 97. This might actually be a reasonable one, but when I was 28, I briefly dated a 20-year-old. A little gross on my part looking back, but I was coming off a bad breakup. She was fun and super into me, which I definitely enjoyed at the time. We shared musical interests. She would introduce me to newer bands, mid-2000s pop punk, GRRL rock, etc., while I would share some of the classics, mostly late 80s and early 90s alt-rock. A friend had 2 extra tickets for the Pixies' Doolittle anniversary tour, which of course I was psyched about as an alt-90s kid. And we went. She spent the whole concert on her phone, tweeting about what a bunch of hipsters this band was, how they were derivative, and thought themselves to be so cool. I'm not even the biggest Pixies fan. Hugely appreciate their influence. I love Nirvana, etc., and the stuff that came after Pixies. But that totally killed it for me. Story 98. She was new in town and made a bunch of friends in other places, and we had lots of fun hanging out. And then it turned out she was also friends with a guy I knew from high school, who was an enormous liar and jerk. She just praised him nonstop, talked about how funny and cool he was, and all I could remember was how he tried to keep friends by offering them expensive gifts he could never provide. I never looked at her the same after that, and then I met some other random dude she was friends with, and he was this guy who did web design. And he was just kind of a template jockey who barely knew CSS or any other language or design skills, and he tried to alpha dog me in the worst way possible. But she was absolutely eating it up. I finally realized women can be as big of losers as some guys I knew. Before I knew that in the abstract, but seeing up close what female shit shows resemble, it was like my interest got nuked from orbit. She later got a DUI and we lost touch completely, and I think my disappearing interest made her pursue me a bit more, but I put a lot of distance between us, so we stopped talking. Story 99. She didn't know what the word novice meant. Probably my biggest George Costanza moment. Story 100. She got a tramp stamp of 2 angels blowing horns. I asked if it was some sort of fart joke. I couldn't take her seriously after that, and vice versa. Story 101. She hit a bird with her car, total accident, unavoidable, and spent the rest of the whole day raging about how dumb the bird was and how it really annoyed her that it had the audacity to die on her windshield. She was so angry. Story 102. I kind of hit it off with this office colleague. She was cute at first, but as I got to know her more, I realized she was the kinds who was into eat, pray, love kind of shit. Talking about universe, vibes, energy, tarot, astrology kind of stuff. She also took on a protective Mamakita role. She'd message me multiple times a day to see if I'd eaten my meals and if I was taking care of myself. She was a nice person, but I just didn't think of life the way she did. I respectfully reduced my contact with her over time and never made the move she was expecting. I transitioned into the friend territory and stayed there. Story 103. I realized that she uses boyfriends only as an emotional dumping ground, but doesn't reciprocate or allow others to show emotions. She would get mad if I said was having a bad day. Not her problem. Story 104. We had 2 places we were living at because I couldn't have a dog where she lived. We wanted to be together, except for that. One day, she was angry texting me about wanting me to live there with her, etc., and said, "I guess I'll wait for your fucking dog to die then." That didn't sit well and still hurts remembering it, especially because my woof BFF passed away about a year later. Story 105. Most of the comments in here are normal reasons for losing attraction in someone. Story 106. She would pronounce French words too perfectly while ordering in public. Cafe latte from Starbucks was said with like a super thick French accent. Bothered me so much. Story 107. Met on a scientific conference and hit it off really well. On the last day, she had a presentation, and she hadn't cross-validated her data when it was obvious she should have. I don't even get it myself, but that just made me lose all interest. Story 108. Was engaged to someone involved in state politics and youth political events. We both aligned politically, both liberal, me more so, and culturally, having gone to high school together and been friends for the years in between. So I was always supportive of her involvement in the young or state-level political party ephemera. But as the years went by, some sort of filter broke, and I started hearing her talking about friends and colleagues, candidates and leaders like she truly hated them. Weird vitriol directed at anyone for any reason. It was such a strange thing to see her go fundraise for someone and then shit-talk them for hours afterward. The filter breakdown also progressed into our private life, with her saying just awful things about my family as throwaway comments or asides. Trying to compete with the vagaries of politics was exhausting, and the higher she climbed, the more disgusting the personalities we had in our circles. I still don't know how I ignored my voice of reason for long. Story 109. We started dating and things started getting intimate. I realized she had really flat feet like platypus duck flat. I had no carpet in my house at the time, and I could hear her feet clapping on the floor with every step. I just couldn't take it. Story 110. Her dog is her everything. And it was really hard to approach her directly with anything because of that. Plus all the kissing and hugging with it, not to mention she never cleared after it in public. That really put me off. Story 111. I was 24. Pretty inexperienced in life and very inexperienced dating. I started seeing this chick and we decided to keep things casual after a date or two. She had a 4-year-old daughter, shared custody with her ex. At one point, she mentioned her ex scolding her for playing Left 4 Dead when her kid was around because it gave the kid nightmares. I thought, I get it. It's been a long day. This is the game you're into. Maybe you have plans to play it with friends. Maybe you thought your kid was asleep and didn't hear the game or whatever. I later learned she didn't even own an Xbox. She did most of her gaming at a LAN center, meaning she took her 4-year-old daughter with her to the LAN center and played a game she knew gave her kid nightmares. That was an extra layer of irresponsibility for her kid that was a huge turnoff for me.